Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to be joined by a very senior diplomat from India, from New Delhi, India, Ambassador Yash Sinha. Ambassador Sinha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone.
Um, Ambassador Sinha has been India's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and of course, he's had a long career in the Indian Foreign Service. So, my first question to you: what was the inspiration to join the Indian Foreign Service, and how did your early career shape your outlook as a diplomat?
That's actually, initially I wanted to join the army.
Yeah.
My father was in the army and even the Gurkhas, and I was fascinated with the uniform.
Mm,
So when I was 7 or 8 years old, I actually got a uniform. My
mm,
father got one tailored for me in Fort William in Calcutta.
mm,
And during the 65 war, we were obviously not at the border, but somewhere at a place called Kancharapara near
mhm,
Barrackpore in
mhm,
Bengal. And I've had lovely photographs of me in the uniform. But Army was my first love, I must confess, right till I finished school.
mm,
And when I applied for the NDA, or when I wanted to, I hadn't applied, when I wanted to apply for the NDA, my
mm,
mother decided enough is enough. And she said, You're not, she put her foot down. My father was in a non family station.
mm,
So that didn't happen. And the Foreign Service attracted me as soon as I joined college in Delhi,
mm.
and I met a few people who were in the Foreign Service. Very impressed with the elan and the fact that you could travel. In the early 80s,
Yeah,
people still weren't traveling that
I
much.
know.
Of course, as a kid, I had gone on board a ship from Bombay to Liverpool with my
Mm,
parents, and that, of course, fascination for going abroad and seeing
mm,
things. I think that was the motive. But when I joined the university and the subjects that I chose, I did a graduation in history and a master's in history. And I think all paths were leading to the civil service examination. But
mm,
the interesting thing is that the lady I was dating and whom I married later on said,
mm.
if you don't make the foreign service, then you'll have to find somebody else. So the choice was very stark, either the foreign service
Absolutely.
or bust. And I'm glad I chose the foreign service.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And, I've had batchmates who joined the Foreign Service and lots of friends. I'd love to get your perspective as how has the role of the Foreign Service or the Indian diplomat evolved since you joined in 1981?
Well, looking back now, 29, but 44 years is a long time. And when we joined, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no internet.
Yeah.
We used snail mail for most of our
Mm,
communications. In fact, you were judged, your writing skills were judged by the dispatches that you were able to send.
right.
And our bosses were very, very critical. I remember my first ambassador in Cairo,
Mm,
he used to keep a red pen.
mm,
And whenever we put up routine notes, he would
mm.
mark them in red
Okay.
and send them back and expect us to revise it and resubmit. Now,
Mm,
if I did something like that to my juniors, they'd be most upset now.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think communication is one. Certainly,
Mm,
that has changed. The speed of communication. I
mm,
mean, events are brought to your drawing room. Well, a television, yes, but now you're traveling somewhere in at the airport or in your car. Your smartphone, you keep abreast of what's happening. So, I
mm,
mean, the initial thing when there was a coup somewhere, you alerted headquarters.
mm,
At best, you would, pick up a phone and try and get through, depending where you were, if there was
mm,
ISD facilities,
mm,
or you would rush through a telex and later on a fax.
mm.
But all that changed. Of course, we needed coded communication. There were other ways to
Correct.
send, but it
Mm,
would take time.
mm,
Now, in a flash of a second,
mm.
people get to know and they get visuals. So,
Yeah,
it has really
it
dramatically
really is.
changed the type of work that we are doing now.
Mm,
And now, I mean, obviously, analysis is something that's still supposed to be our forte, and we still required to analyze events very carefully. But the speed of communication ensures that your analysis sometimes follows the
mm,
analysis in the media,
mm.
especially the social media.
Amazing. Thank you. Uh, there's so much knowledge that our foreign service officers have. So I really had to pick and choose what to talk to you. So I thought, let's talk today about geopolitics in South Asia. and with specific reference to Bangladesh and Pakistan. And since your last role was in the UK, the second part we'll talk a little bit about the UK.
So,
So, my first question to your ambassador is, how would you describe the current state of India Bangladesh relations? And what has changed since the coup? And where do you see this heading?
well, you must put this in perspective, this question, because uh, India and Bangladesh obviously share a very, very close relationship. Even today, they do share a close
Mm,
relationship. However, and that's important, however, since what happened in August last year
mm,
and a so called interim government, which, by the way, is not really prescribed in their
mm,
constitution,
mm,
came to power, I think the signals are mixed.
mm,
If I could put it as diplomatically as possible,
mm,
we are getting mixed signals from there.
mm,
But given the close links that bind our people, our countries, our economies, I do hope that this is a temporary blip because don't forget, India looms large in the consciousness of our neighbors, particularly a country like Bangladesh, where it is surrounded by three sides by India and their lifeline to their economy
mm,
is India. Even now, they're buying rice and other essentials from India
mm,
because India is the lifeline. And I don't want to sound in any way a big brother because I
mm.
think we also buy from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
May not be as much as we sell to them, but that link is so strong that I do not think that changes of government can completely destroy
Mm,
such links.
mm. Very interesting. And do you see this relationship change after President Trump has come into power again?
Well, it's still early days.
Okay.
I think I'm aware that he's not particularly fond of the chief advisor in
Mm,
Bangladesh.
mm,
But having said that, I think in geopolitics and international diplomacy, the nation's interests come first. So we'll have to wait and see. The only thing that I've seen that he's suspended aid
correct.
to not only Bangladesh but to most countries except Egypt and Israel.
Mm,
So I think we'll have to see the 90-day review.
mm,
What does it bring?
mm,
And any pronouncements that the State Department under Senator Marco Rubio or the White House under President Trump makes in the situation in
mm.
Bangladesh. Just yesterday, our Prime Minister and President Trump
I
spoke.
don't know.
I'm not sure whether they spoke about Bangladesh, but
Mm,
certainly we've been having conversations with the previous Biden administration
mm.
on Bangladesh, particularly after Sheikh Hasina's removal last year.
Very interesting. The other perspective I wanted from you on Bangladesh was that it's a country which only has two countries as its neighbors, India and Myanmar. How critical is Bangladesh as a partner for India in terms of regional security and trade?
I think it's extremely critical because under Sheikh Hasina, the Bangladesh economy,
Hmm.
the human index, everything improved dramatically. In fact, it was ironic that the Bangladesh economy was doing much better than the Pakistan economy, its
Yes.
parent.
Hmm.
And Bangladesh was doing very well in terms of their GDP, in terms of their trade. Uh, Overall, they were doing very well. However, I think as far as India is concerned, given Bangladesh's strategic location and the inroads made by territorial powers, I think India has to be very careful about its neighborhood. And Bangladesh, particularly, is extremely important to us, not only in terms of our trade, of course, in economic investments, but also in terms of the the strategic calculus.
Hmm.
I think Bangladesh is extremely important.
Interesting. Let me now move to Pakistan. A few questions on Pakistan. Then I want to link in China in both these countries. What are some of the main impediments to dialogue and cooperation between India and Pakistan, other than what we keep telling them that we can't have terrorism and talks?
You know, I mean, I would say the obvious answer is obviously terrorism, but since you precluded that, I think it's also a lot to do with the birth of Pakistan
Correct.
and the way it was carved out of India,
Mm,
the embittered legacy of partition
mm,
that still imbues the relationship, even though three generations at least have gone by. But still, I think the mindset is such, particularly in Pakistan, since I've lived in Pakistan, I know that the mindset of the school curriculum, etc., is such that hostility to India is inborn.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, that has had a reaction over the decades, over the years, in India too. Earlier, we would look upon about Pakistan, with mixed feelings. I mean, there was cricket, and there were the great Pakistanis, are very hospitable people. There's so many things that bind us,
Yeah.
the music, etc. Great ghazal singers of
Hmm.
Pakistan.
Hmm.
But all that, unfortunately, has sort of paled into the background or faded into the background because of the situation that exists today with terrorism, the anti-India, constant
Propaganda.
anti-India rhetoric, the postures that they adopt. Even today, when
Hmm.
their economy is in shambles, they are busy hobnobbing with the generals and the jihadis in Bangladesh to try and get a united front against India. So
Correct.
with this sort of mindset, obviously,
Hmm.
it's an impediment. We can easily, not easily, we can overcome this impediment, but then you need, two people to tango.
Absolutely. Well said. And I'd love also to get your perspective on how does Pakistan's internal political and economic instability affect its foreign policy towards India?
I think, as far as the Pakistan domestic situation is concerned,
Hmm.
if I say it's dire, it's an understatement.
Hmm.
Its economy is, as I said, in shambles. I think they have I think even more than Argentina, if I remember correctly, Pakistan has availed of 24 bailouts from the
Yeah.
IMF, and
Hmm.
Argentina has availed of 22. So you could, and the current bailout that is there, that the IMF have sort of, I've always maintained
Hmm.
that Pakistan is the sick man of Asia,
Yeah.
surviving on a drip of international aid. When I
Hmm.
was there, it was American aid, World Bank, etc. Of course, now heavily supplemented, or at least, if not immediately, by Chinese assistance, by
Hmm.
assistance from Saudi Arabia, from the Gulf, etc. But
Hmm.
it constantly requires these heavy infusions
Hmm.
of international aid, and that's why it's so heavily in debt
Hmm.
today, and because of the problems that they face. In fact, I remember reading somewhere by an ex-foreign finance minister of Pakistan
Hmm.
that Pakistan is a 1% republic. A very interesting term.
Hmm.
We used to hear of Mr. 10%,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
earlier, but
Uh,
the 1% republic basically means that 1% of the elite of
hmm.
Pakistan
Hmm.
control the economy
Wow.
and have led to what Pakistan, the completely unequal distribution of wealth,
Hmm.
and add to the mix the larger than life role of the Pakistan army.
Hmm.
And then you get a picture of economic collapse, of political instability. You have the most popular leader in jail. And all that obviously impacts the foreign relations, not just
Hmm.
with India, but in general. But with India specifically because of its hostile posture,
Hmm.
the more desperate Pakistan gets, the more sort of reckless pursuits as far as India is concerned,
Hmm.
whether in terms of terrorism or any other way. But the desire to somehow harm India, to cut India to size, is
Hmm.
something that is all pervading as far as the decision
Abs-
makers in Pakistan are concerned,
Absolutely.
particularly
Well
the
said.
jihadi military complex.
Very well said. And I completely agree. But you referred to Saudi Arabia, and I've been speaking to some people in Pakistan on my podcast and many people. There seems to be a feeling that even Saudi Arabia and Turkey are now pulling back their hand in terms of not just giving money, but also they're not willing to support Pakistan. What are your thoughts?
You see, as far as financial support goes, Saudi Arabia still continues to
Okay.
extend
Hmm.
support, but not to the extent that they did in the past, because obviously they realize it's a losing proposition. I mean, it's like putting money into a bottomless pit.
Right. Hmm.
And there are no returns really that are coming. So, and also, if you recall, the way Saudi Arabia is headed
Hmm.
under the
MBS.
Crown Prince MBS Mohammed bin Salman,
Hmm.
it's headed in a direction where they are trying to adjust to the
Mm,
international environment, to widespread, more broad-based their economy, not rely only on oil, and even as far as their alliances and friendships, etc., are concerned.
mm,
And one thing that the last 10 years certainly is the outreach that the Indian government, under the current Prime Minister, made towards the Gulf, UAE, and Saudi
yeah.
Arabia. So that obviously also makes a difference in
Mm,
neutralizing any Pakistani perfidy as far as the Gulf is concerned. And there is a sea change because I've served both in Saudi Arabia and in the UAE. So I
mm,
know how it was then. We used to plead for a visit from India, a high level visit from India.
mm,
It didn't happen. And
mm.
when this government came, the sort of rapid progress in relations is
Amazing.
truly remarkable. So I think in that sense, as far as Turkey is concerned, Turkey is very much still committed to Pakistan.
Yeah.
And they've probably held back a bit because of their application for membership of
Mm, mm,
BRICS.
mm.
And also because they see that the economic interests lie in South Asia with India. But
Mm.
please do not ever write off the mischief making capacity
Absolutely.
of that country as
Absolutely.
far as India is
Yeah,
concerned.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well said. So, we've spoken about Bangladesh, we've spoken about Pakistan. I want to now ask you about China and the infrastructure China is building in Bangladesh and its impact on India's geopolitical calculations, and also the CPEC or the infrastructure China is building in Pakistan.
See, as far as China is concerned, I remember we were about a decade ago, we were talking about the strings of pearl that were encircling India. And a
Right.
lot of people were very skeptical that it
Mm,
was India's paranoia. It was not India only that was pointing it out, there were
mm,
others too. And
mm.
now, when you look at it, actually, it was very prescient in what we were saying then, because we were seeing it happening on the ground.
Mm.
And you chose two countries, Bangladesh and Pakistan, but it's happening all over our
Correct.
neighborhood, or
Yep.
all the countries in our neighborhood. But specifically Bangladesh, since you asked about Bangladesh, the big 6 kilometer plus bridge, the Padma Bridge, has been constructed by a Chinese company. But
Yeah.
what is even more significant is the development of the seaport of Chittagong,
Mm,
done by the China.
mm,
There's another port in Bangladesh called Mungla, if I'm not mistaken,
mhm,
which is
mhm.
being developed by through Chinese assistance. And then the submarine base near Cox's Bazar.
Mm,
It used to be called the BNS Sheikh Hasina. I
mm.
wonder what it's called now. So
Wow. Mm,
I mean, these are obviously a submarine base in the Bay of Bengal
mm,
with Chinese ingress
mm,
is obviously a matter of concern to us.
mm.
In Pakistan, the CPEC, the 3,000 long kilometer 3,000 kilometer long China Pakistan economic corridor is through Indian land. I mean, Pakistan occupied
Correct.
Kashmir.
Mm,
And what they're doing, of course, whether you talk to Pakistanis, you'll realize that the $65 billion that investments that China was supposed to make, I'm not sure how much they actually made, but even if they have made more than 50% of that,
mm.
again, as want to use that analogy, putting money in a bottomless pit.
Correct.
See what's happening in Gwadar, the port
Mm.
that they
Yep.
control, in
Mm.
Baluchistan, etc. I mean, I just read in the paper yesterday that some Chinese have lodged an FIR in Pakistan against
Mm.
harassment. Now that's interesting. I mean,
Amazing.
they're targeted, yes, but launching an FIR against harassment against Pakistanis is interesting. But what I'm
Amazing.
trying to point out is that China has put in a lot of money as part of its BRI,
Mm.
Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
It has come in for a lot of criticism, and now they are holding back.
Mm.
We see in Sri Lanka what they did in Hambantota Port, for instance. It was what
Mm.
6.6, I forget now,
Mm.
6% over LIBOR. The
Mm.
interest rate that they were charging, it was of course
Yeah.
negotiated and brought down, and now they hold that port for 99 years lease. So I think when debt is turned into equity,
Yeah.
then that is the problem as far as India is concerned.
Mm.
I saw that in Sri Lanka, and I hope it doesn't happen in some of our other neighboring countries.
Incredible. Thank you. Let's now talk a little bit now about the India-UK relations post-Brexit. Uh, my first question on this topic is what were some of the key opportunities and challenges that emerged for India post Brexit?
So I was there at that time, soon
Yeah.
after the vote.
Mm.
And, it was even the British recognized. In fact, I remember I was present at the speech of Theresa May in January 2017 at Lancaster House, where for the first time she outlined her vision for a global Britain. And
Mm.
among the countries that she mentioned, and
Mm.
I mean, it was the United States, Australia, and India, and
Mm.
Japan,
Mm.
and China, of course. So these are the countries that were sort of singled out for a closer embrace as far as the
Mm.
economic relationship
Mm.
goes. Of course, a lot of water has flown down the
Yeah.
Thames since that speech, and we
Correct.
know what's happened
Yeah.
and what's happened to countries that she mentioned also, and the UK's relationship with those countries. But I think, as far as India is concerned, for us, we were wary because we were using the UK. A lot of our companies were using the UK as an entrepot to the continent, to Europe.
Mm.
I think there was enough time for corporates to readjust and set up shop in the continent, in Europe,
Mm.
instead of relying solely from covering it from UK.
Mm.
But, India is the second largest, if I remember correctly, Indian company, the second largest investor into the United Kingdom. For
Really?
us, UK, I think 2 years ago, if I got the stats right,
Mm.
Indian companies created 110,000 jobs in the
Mm.
United Kingdom.
Mm.
So I think we were the second largest after the United States in
Mm.
terms of investments into, I just second or third, depending
Mm.
on the year that. But the last Grant Thornton report that I read was India was the second largest. So I think what I'm trying to say is that the UK has always been very important to India. Uh, Traditional links, our legacies, uh, the comfort of doing business with each other. We know each other well. However, with Brexit, I think it gave us an opportunity to negotiate something bilaterally. Earlier, it was a multilateral deal through the European Union, and our European friends told us it was actually the FTA was stalled because the Brits were stalling it. And I don't know whether that's correct or not. But when
Mm.
we are dealing with the Brits directly,
Mm.
a different picture emerges. And since both countries attach importance to the bilateral relationship,
Mm.
I think it will be a win-win situation, a well-negotiated deal. I mean, I
Mm.
remember a Commonwealth survey had pointed out that a well-negotiated FTA with India would increase UK exports by 2 or 3 or 4%, something like that, and similarly for India. So I think it would be a win-win situation if we tap into our complementarities,
So,
which I think our negotiators, I'm
correct.
sure, are
Correct.
doing at present.
Correct. But given the fact that, the UK is now out of the European Union, and given your understanding of that market, are there any specific sectors that you believe could benefit from the close India-UK economic cooperation?
As far as India is concerned, we would benefit a lot. Technology is obviously the number one sector. Technology, because Britain even now has a lot to offer, even though it may not be the power it was, a pale shadow of
Mm.
the power that it was earlier. Its universities, its institutes are still top class, among the
Correct.
best in the world.
Mm.
And that is why we have a very close collaboration in the technology side,
Mm.
in asset, I mean, in science and technology, in education, in fintech, and the global financial markets. I mean, I remember masala bonds being floated by Indian companies at the
Yeah.
London Stock Exchange.
Mm.
So I think London continues to remain one of the principal financial centers in the world. And I
Mm.
think India has a lot to gain. And similarly, the UK. The
Correct.
UK gains immediately a huge market. I mean, there are companies, British companies doing business here like JCB or BAE Systems or some of the others who've been here for many years.
Mm.
But I think what we really need to do is to try and get the SME sectors working with each other.
Right.
If we can get the SMEs from the UK and India, get them together, ensure that we have cross investments, I think it would be a win-win for both the countries.
Well said. I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is, given the large presence of the Indian diaspora in the UK, How do you see the Indian diaspora being used by India, and maybe used being, it's the wrong word to use, but how could the Indian diaspora support uh, the strengthening of bilateral ties between the two countries?
All I can do is recall what Prime Minister Modi had said during his visit, I think it was 2015, about the living bridge. The Indian diaspora he termed as the living bridge between the two countries. And I think it was a very apt description.
Yeah.
It was about, I think, 1.8 million Indian or people of Indian origin play an extremely important role.
Mm.
3% of the population contributing 6% of its GDP. But we also need to be mindful that we are India. We
Mm.
are a very diverse nation.
Mm.
And the diaspora in the United Kingdom reflects that diversity.
Right.
And so we have people of different faiths and different regions, etc. So we don't sometimes act as one unit like some of our neighbors do. I'm specifically
Yeah.
referring to the Mirpuris and Pakistanis who
Correct.
exercise undue influence, at least as far as the ruling party is
Mm.
concerned, because of their concentration in the Midlands and North Leicester and Leeds and
Yeah.
Manchester. But the Indian diaspora, I think, is slowly realizing the
Mm.
importance of trying and at least ensuring that good relations between the two countries means a win-win situation for them also. And
Mm.
as they rise up the value chain, obviously their priorities also change. So their support, their political preferences, their ideological preferences also change. So I think it's a challenge for the government, the Indian High Commission and its consulates to try and tap into this diaspora to the extent we can, and we have been trying and reasonably successfully, I would say. And there are people who are committed to promoting relations between the two countries, whether it's on the political side. We have a lot of members of parliament of Indian origin, or on the economic side, where we have captains of industry,
Mm.
heading corporates in the UK,
Yeah.
who also help in promoting links with the mother country, if I can
Mm.
put it that way.
Amazing. My last question, and we started with talking about the Indian Foreign Service. I'm going to come back to a general question for you. What are your thoughts on the future of the Indian Foreign Service in an increasingly digital and interconnected world? How does the service have to change?
Well, the service certainly needs to adapt, and you need younger people, not people of my generation who are not so savvy with technology. But I think the younger generation that is joining the foreign service, I have noticed that they are far more comfortable with
Correct.
these technological tools,
Hmm.
and they're very good at using social media, for
Hmm.
instance. That's very important because what you can put on X,
Hmm.
earlier
Yeah.
Twitter,
Hmm.
is extremely important. The message it conveys is
Yeah.
flashed globally, and I think they're using these tools very well. And I think that has changed the way diplomacy is also connected. For instance, I could never ever imagine that a head of state or government greeting another head of state or government through
Hmm.
X.
Correct.
I mean, you put out a tweet
Hmm.
wishing him or her a happy birthday or
Hmm.
a happy National Day. I mean, these things we used to wait for these
Yes,
letters that would come,
I know.
signed letters, and we'd make photocopies and keep them on our files. Now,
Yes.
I'm sure that's still happening,
Yeah.
but the speed of communication, I think the Foreign Service has to adapt or it will lose its relevance. And I think it is adapting because don't forget, I mean, it depends on how you look at India's, international diplomacy over the last 10 or 15 years.
Hmm.
I think we've been reasonably, if I would like to say, been very successful,
Hmm.
but to sound more sort of modest, I would say, because I'm still part of that tribe, though I
Hmm.
retired 6, 7 years ago. But I think we've been quite successful
Correct.
in not only adapting to the tools that the digital age brings with it, but also using it to our benefit and reaching out to our counterparts and interlocutors all over the world.
Well said. And on that note, Ambassador Sinha, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey with the Foreign Service. I think we covered a reasonable amount of ground, but talking to you is leaving me a little hungry for much, much more, and maybe I'll ask you for another conversation sometime. But we
Pleasure.
covered some very interesting ground on India, Bangladesh, on India, Pakistan. I'd love to do much more a deep dive on Saudi Arabia with you sometime and UAE, of course. But we also covered China and its role in investments in these two countries. And finally, we spoke about Brexit, post Brexit UK and India and UK relations. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.